All right. So from the ages of 18 to 22, I was in a massive pit of misery that people who knew me then still to this day sometimes ask me how I got out of it and what I did. And there's no simple, short, easy answer because it took years of pain, progress, and little steps to actually get out of this detrimental state that I was in. And so there's three main things that I had to get over. Those three main things are things that a lot of people really struggle with throughout their life and are some of the biggest problems that they had to tackle throughout their life to get further in where they want to go. The first one being addiction, is that if you have substances in your life that you consume on a regular basis, the chances are they're going to be detrimental. They're going to tear you down. And that's the first one that's got to go for you to change your life around. Hands down. No argument. Second one is weight loss. Your food consumption has to be right, or you're not going to have what you need to carry about your day. You're going to be giving yourself things that aren't going to help you. They're going to tear you down. That extra weight isn't going to be good for all health boundaries that you have, and it's just going to stop you from fulfilling every life necessity that you need to. Third one is mental imbalances, anxiety, depression, things along that sort. And that's the third one in that step because problems 1 and 2 solve a hefty percentage of that issue. They won't fix it entirely. That's just not a thing, but they will lead to handling that in such a healthier, better manner that it's just going to become much easier to tackle that third step. So this will be a little 3-part series of how I overcame addiction, I beat weight loss, and really got to manage on my anxiety and my depression. So first things first, addiction. I had a daily routine that made it so every day I was fiending for substances. I had multiple substances that I was addicted to that I had to or felt like I had to consume on a daily basis. This made it damn near impossible to succeed in life, to have healthy relationships, to keep my body healthy and my brain functioning. So first things first, when I woke up in the morning, is I'd consume some cannabis. I always had access to cannabis, so throughout the day I would be consuming that. That was the least concerning of all of them. But as soon as I consumed some cannabis, I would immediately press 100 capsules of kratom powder. For those of you that don't know, kratom is a leaf from Thailand that is actually a plant-based opiate and is well known for getting people off of more addictive opiates. But a typical dose on a bottle of kratom when you buy it is about 8 capsules, or 4 grams, each capsule being half a gram. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd press 100, and I'd take all 100. Immediately after, I'd press another 100 capsules. I wouldn't be buying bottles of pills, I'd be buying kilos at a time online to supply my habit. Once I popped my 100, sometimes 120 capsules at a time, from there, I would immediately jump into drinking a Bang energy drink. This gave me a rush right off the bat. It got me going, it got me up because I was hungover from the night before. So immediately got rid of some nausea from the night before of drinking, that cannabis consumption, jumped right into consuming my kratom. Before that even had a chance to start taking effect, I was drinking a Bang energy drink. I was getting amped up, ready to handle whatever the day took. This was a 7 days a week routine. Work days, weekends, whatever I was doing, I had this consumption routine. And I consistently carried out with it for 4 years straight. Throughout the day, I had another 40 to 60 capsules that would pop just to keep my high going. And because of this consumption regimen, I wasn't able to eat, because the second I ate something, that stomach full of kratom that was keeping me high would just immediately diminish, give me nausea, and I'd start vomiting if I ate anything at all. So it became very difficult to perform on a daily level because I wasn't eating, all I was consuming was caffeine, kratom, cannabis. And so once my day ended, my work day or whatever I had going on during the day, I would go home and that's where I'd have my one meal. But right before I had this meal is where I would start drinking heavily. Wasn't a exact specific amount a night, but it would drastically ramp up throughout the years. And so I got to a point where I was drinking maybe half a pint to a pint of hard alcohol, as well as just beers and wine and all sorts of alcohol that I could get my hand on. Cheap liquor, whatever it was, I was drinking myself to sleep. Right before I passed out, the next thing I would do is I would take my prescribed medications that the psychiatrist told me I needed. This was an atypical antipsychotic and an SSRI. Pretty general for people with generalized anxiety disorders and depression. These are commonly prescribed medications that all sorts of teenagers and adults alike are taking on a daily basis. This is how I ended my night. So, atypical antipsychotics generally are known for passing people out, just straight to sleep. You're going to bed whether you like it or not. So after this day of kratom consumption, massive amounts of cannabis, multiple grams of extracts and edibles and flour and vaporizers, I would drink myself to sleep and I'd take my antipsychotics and my SSRIs day in, day out for years. It tore my life apart. I couldn't keep healthy relationships. The people in my life were disappointed and they didn't approve of it. Understandably, they could see it, what it was doing to me. The level of consumption led me to gain massive amounts of weight. I was in and out of the hospital multiple times. There was times where I had to come face to face with the fact that I was going to die because I was convinced. I was in the hospital convulsing and just freaking out. And it took me to this point of rock bottom, which unfortunately seems like you have to go. That's the worst part about when someone wants to get over addiction is it doesn't matter the people that do support you or tell you what you can do to get better. It is going to take everything from you before you can get over it. And that's one of the roughest things is you have to lose everything before you gain everything back. And that substance will take everything from you, whether it's one substance or two or three. So, after multiple hospital visits, after waking up every morning and fighting the urge to consume, eventually it got to a point where I was going to make it and I was going to get through it, or I was going to keep consuming and my body would give out. I could feel it. I could feel my body degrading. I could feel my internal organs barely keeping up, my chest pains, my gut pains, I couldn't stand for most of the day because I felt like I was going to pass out. Always, every day. Constant vomiting. When I slept, I was out like no other. You couldn't wake me if you wanted to. And so, this is what led me to start to get out of that. Once I was at my full bottom, once I knew that it was either death or carrying through, I finally decided that I would have to do something. And the steps that I carried out weren't easy, but there are some things that did help me. And so, first thing is not going cold turkey on anything, is you have to decrease your level of consumption to where it's easier to get off of it at the time that you do. So this means that for the first part of your day, if you have a consumption regimen and you wake up and you consume, you need to first push off your consumption as much as you can. As much as you can capably push yourself off of, do it for that amount of time. Just give it a shot and try to do this every day. Give yourself a window of time where you will go without it. This is going to train your brain to say, at least learn, this is what it's like to not be on this substance. And then you get the reward of the substance, but you have to continuously practice this as you are lowering your doses. So your body and your brain gets used to not consuming and then gets used to consuming even less. One other big thing is some type of food in the morning. My food in the morning was a blueberry RX bar in the morning, every morning. And this was enough to just like give me something to keep me going. It gave me some kind of energy. And this allowed my body to feel like it had some kind of nourishment, some kind of something to battle what I was going through. The other thing is I had a heavy caffeine habit, obviously, lowering that. Lowering the caffeine and lowering the consumption of the other substances. So having multiple substances that I was consuming, it wasn't possible, it wasn't ideal to cancel all at the same time. So first to go for me was alcohol. So if I'm drinking at the end of the night and waking up in the morning, I'm immediately more inclined to consume other substances because I feel horrible. So the pushing off of that time frame for that substance wouldn't have been in the morning. It would have been in the evening. But that meant that usually I consume around dinner time. If I could push off my consumption to when I'm actually eating. So like while I'm making food, I'm not just already 3 drinks in, pounding fucking whatever it is. So from there, if I could push off that level, not only to the time where I was eating or right after I was eating, my stomach already had things in it. And at that point, I was able to drink less because my stomach wouldn't be able to stomach it all. It wouldn't agree with it. And even if it made me feel worse, well, then I'm not getting the outcome of the alcohol that I did want, which is making me more inclined to not want to consume. That was the practice with that. Gradually cutting that out until I could completely take it away. And in brutal honesty, the cannabis consumption did play a role in not drinking alcohol because there is some form of substitution of other substances as long as it can be controlled to weed out more detrimental ones. So I could consume more cannabis at night for the time being. Therefore, I could cut out my alcohol, and gradually through months and months over time, I was able to get it out of my system, gradually decreasing and pushing off the time frame where I consumed. Once the alcohol was gone, it was time to tackle the next problem, the kratom. The hundreds of capsules a day, the 90 grams of kratom in a day that I was consuming. These amounts and these levels of consumption are not meant to be glorified. They're not meant to be something to laugh at, because it's shameful on my part that I took myself there. But it does bring a lot of pride in knowing what I pulled myself out of, knowing what other people have and can pull themselves out of. People who haven't been addicted to something, who haven't torn their life apart because of the substance, they will never, ever understand what it's like to feel that pain, to feel just the vulnerability to a substance or the willingness to do whatever it takes to keep consuming. So, tackling the kratom. That's where, in the morning, I would have to push off my consumption. So I could have my capsules ready, but I couldn't take 100. So what could I drop to? Well, maybe I could drop to 80. Maybe I could drop to 60. Let's push it down as far, or maybe I can meet in the middle. Let's go to 70. Okay, 70, that's a 30% decrease in that first 100 capsules. If it was 100 or 120 at my peak. But We're going to say at that time I was consuming 100 because as I was consuming it, became less and less likely that my body was able to handle it and I physically couldn't take as much. So it got to a point where I wasn't able to even take my max and I was physically forced to drop it down because my body was going to give out. So from 100 to 70. Now, as opposed to first thing in the morning, my 70 was actually 2.5, 3 hours into the day. So I'm waiting. I'm pushing it off the maximum amount of time I can. I went from a Bang energy drink to a drink known as Odyssey. Odyssey are very light caffeine, not a whole lot, lots of fruit juice, low sugar. And this allowed me to have the mental stimulation of the caffeine and carry on through my day. But also, Odyssey has mushroom extract in it. And so there's a lot of hype right now and popularity regarding mushrooms and the nootropic aspects of them. And it's well known that they play a big role in neurogenesis, specifically lion's mane, which Odyssey is heavy in. So consuming lion's mane during the time period where I pushed off my consumption, because remember, I'm trying to retrain my brain to function without this, and doing it with a mission in mind, led me to be able to push my brain into new patterns of how I was functioning without this substance. And I could talk myself through the scenarios of this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it, and I don't need the substance for it because I can carry this out functionally without it. So throughout time, I could gradually increase the time where I wasn't consuming and decrease the amount where I was consuming to a point where I didn't consume at all. Once you're without a substance or multiple substances, once they're completely gone, especially the ones that give you that immediate high and gratification, your body is going to crave something. Your mind and your body's going to say, what are we taking? Like, what are we doing right now? Like, let's consume something. And so one thing I did place in there to really aid and retrain my brain is another mushroom that is well known for neurogenesis, and that is psilocybin mushrooms. A very, very small microdose. I wouldn't necessarily weigh it out every time. I would just take like a very, very small piece, probably not even the typical microdose, just like a 0.1 maybe, not even a 0.2. This was just to give my body some type of mental pathway assistance into the retraining of my brain. But this also couldn't be a first thing in the morning. See, the lion's mane, not as potent in that stimulating effect. Along with the caffeine, it was a nice wake me up, and my brain was good and wired to continue my day on in a functional manner without a substance. That was great. It instigated that change in those neural pathways. So I staged my psilocybin consumption very later in the day. This was typically right around the ending of work. So I would consume, know I'm about to get off. By that time, I have a lot of anxieties fading away and a lot of new thought processes coming into play. And this was beautiful for the mindset of tackling addiction, because there are a lot of happiness effects with psilocybin, and you have to keep in mind that this is not to say that this is something you should consume every day. And I wasn't consuming it every single day. It was placed purposefully at certain times of a certain day, spaced out in a way that I wasn't relying on the psilocybin 100% of the time. I was using its beneficial factors at a small dose to carry out a specific goal and action. Knowing that I consumed my psilocybin, I was again, similar to the lion's mane, able to purposefully train my brain. And from there, I would show myself that I can enjoy nightly activities that don't involve consumption. At that time, it was things that I wouldn't do now. It would be like just playing video games or even going on a small run. That was a big thing that changed, is involving some slight physical activity. Because the more exertion I can do, the more my body felt these endorphins and this high of the exercise, and then it was drained. It was ready to relax. Whereas if I didn't exercise and I was craving these substances, my body was going to want something. And so exercise became this high that I could place very purposefully to help me in aiding that addiction. Once the alcohol was gone, the kratom was gone, next came the SSRI was first to go. Because I knew the atypical antipsychotic was harder for me to cut out. It made more sense go for the SSRI first, get it knocked out of the way, then we'll work on an antipsychotic. So those are a little more simple in forms of just getting rid of, because there it's just, the rule is don't go cold turkey for me. It's just cut the dose in half. Consume, you'll have a period of withdrawal, of being emotional and down. And from there, it's even out. And then once I even out, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty much back to normal. I'd give it another month, probably. Make sure, even when I think my body's adjusted, give it another month to adjust. After that adjustment period, cut it in half again. Boom, right back into it. Yeah, it sucks. And you should probably tell yourself from the very beginning, it's going to suck as soon as I cut this, because you're prepared. You know, don't get accustomed to that time period where you're like, damn, I feel a little bit better. Like, it's not that bad. But each time that you go through that period of cutting down and then getting back up to a level of all right, that level of all right is a little bit better. And that was the wonderful thing, is it's almost like this treat, like a glimpse at like what it's like to be okay. And through this period, each time you cut down, you get to a point where you're just going to not take it at all. And that one's usually much harder than just the cutting down, because your body's completely without it. But again, you can do things to help you in with the negative effects of cutting it out. A lot of people struggle with sleep. They struggle with daily energy, anxiety, and depression, obviously. And so there's lots of tools. This is why YouTube's a great platform, because it has so many tools to actually use scientific data to help you. And you can look up any of it. You can do a non-sleep deep rest during the day or first thing when you wake up, and you're going to get that serotonin boost or dopamine boost for like a long time. And it's beautiful. Anytime I got something I don't want to do, if I got to get a tooth pulled at the fucking dentist, guess what? I do an NSDR in the morning, and I really don't mind it that much. Like, it's incredible how those work, and I use them sparingly because of how potent they are in that aspect. So, we're cutting out our antipsychotics. We're cutting out our SSRIs, our medications that the psychiatrist said, you need this. You 100% need this. Yeah, sure, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate that. You just added to my discomfort, my mental incapability of performing correctly. Appreciate it. But now we're not doing what they told us, which you should consult with your physician first. Keep in mind, I'm not recommending you just ignore your physician. This is how I carry it out. This is all not 100% scientifically backed. This is a personal breakdown of what I did to get away from addiction. Multiple substances. But it worked for me. So now I've cut out my antipsychotics. I've cut out my SSRIs by cutting the dose in half over the course of a time where I could recover, go past that time of recovery, and do it again until I was consuming zero. And I did this with both the SSRI and the antipsychotic. So now I'm alcohol-free. I'm kratom-free. And I'm psychiatry-based medicine-free. The only other thing was cannabis and caffeine. Okay. So those are not too bad to cut out. Caffeine can be a little difficult, and cannabis is much more difficult than people think. People think that cannabis is great and not addictive and all this, and it's got a great placement in the world now. But as someone who works in the cannabis industry, know that there are a lot of detrimental effects to it. Your sleep's not as good, even though it feels like it. You eat like crazy, which just leads to fatigue the next day.
Yeah.
And mentally, when you're on it, yeah, you might feel some anxiety relief, but I know now, as someone who doesn't consume on a regular basis, that the second I go back to consumption, if I do that more than once a week, if I do that 2 times in a week, if I consume twice, the following week, my anxiety will be through the roof. Anxiety that I don't usually feel at all anymore. So it's important to acknowledge that. It's not everything you think it is, and it's a great plant. It's whatever you want to think it is, but it's a little different. So those were lowered. Cannabis eventually got to a point where I'm not consuming daily, and then I'm not consuming weekly. I'm not consuming monthly. Now, I might consume cannabis once a month, maybe once every other month, depending on what I need to do. My caffeine intake, I went from anything with caffeine and anhydrous, I don't consume anymore. So only natural caffeine is what I consume. Coffee and tea. That's it. If I'm drinking tea, it's usually yerba mate, sugar-free yerba mate, and black coffee. And that's it. It feels great. It's stimulating. It has a lot of other beneficial effects. Yerba mate on the mental side. Coffee is, just great all around. It tastes good. It's 0 calories. It's wonderful. And once I was out of this stage of consuming everything, things started piecing themselves together again. I was able to communicate with people. I was able to have friends or family members without having something get in the way of our interactions. That being said, it's difficult when those friends and family members start to return to your life because you realize what you did to push them out, and you do get a little angry at them not being there for you. One of the hardest parts about addiction was that people can't understand, like I said earlier, what it's like to go through that. So they usually push things on you that are negative, and this tears you down and brings you down, but you really just need the support. And so I want to highlight this moment to say that anybody in the comments, comment what you're going through, comment what you're struggling with, so that we can build a community of people that understand and are supportive and positive and helpful, because the lack of that in a community of people that are dealing with substance abuse, it's just dramatically depressing. But we can get to a point where we're free and we've got support. And if others can support us, maybe people we don't even know, but they understand, then we can start to get those people back in our life that we truly love us. Let's get away from these things. Let's cut them out of our lives, because that's just the first step to living unrivaled. Is we're going to get addiction free. Then we're going to lose some weight. We're going to get healthy. We're going to get active. Then we're going to get our mindset to where we've got confidence. We're not anxious walking into a ring. Guess what? We know what we're doing. We know what we're going to do down the line. And we're happy to do it. And we're stoked to do it because we know we're going to do it well. Addiction is nothing to glorify. It's nothing to joke about. It is possibly the worst pain we will feel in our lives, for most people. But we can get through it. And I know when I was an addict, hearing people say, oh, you'd be happier without this. Like, once you feel that high, you're just laughing at it like, no. But as someone who's been through it, as someone who consumed all sorts of substances, that was just my daily routine, by the way, not along the lines of if, I was with someone and they had a different substance, or I came across a different substance. Like, yeah, today I'm going to do this. No. The high of living a healthy life is beyond beautiful, especially after knowing the places that another addiction took you to. I replaced my substance addiction with exercise addiction and just an addiction to living the best life, to overall consuming healthy foods, exercising, working hard at my job, and doing the best I can in every way. And you can do it too. I promise you, you won't think it for the longest time, and I'm sorry that you're going to have to hit rock bottom. But once you do, know that it's just up from there. And you're going to do it. We're all going to do it. Let us know in the comments what you're dealing with. Let us know what you're trying to do to get out of it, which is even better. And if you're not sure what to do, someone else comment what they can do. Let's be positive, let's be supportive, and let's get through this. I'll see you later.